Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin. Thank you for joining us for our most recent episode of our podcast entitled The Secret War on Cash, where we look at some of the things that are happening in our financial markets and our economy, some of the changes, some of the change for good or bad, I should say, as well as some of the things that we may have change in the future, or some of the things that we may have to look forward to. I have with me my co-host, Chris Agelastos. Chris, thanks for joining us here today. How are you?
Doing well, surviving my last week of graduation festivities. So
Good
I'm
Lord.
I got light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I say good Lord. I think you're at least 3 or 4 weeks into this now.
It's
Graduation
nonstop.
is Yeah,
Yeah.
graduation is not a one time thing that you show up, get your diploma, and go anymore. It's a whole process. But
Yep.
we had a son who graduated during COVID, and on
Mhm.
the flip side of that is they unfortunately missed out on all the graduation type stuff. Very anticlimactic as far as that goes from high school.
Yeah, that
So.
that was a weird year or two.
A weird year to be sure, and for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about financial markets today. And we're now well into the month of May 2024.
Hmm.
We've been talking about markets a lot, and I'll tell you what, the one thing that just dawned on me today is, and obviously we've all been experiencing some of the buildup going into this political season, but the markets have been crazy enough in and of themselves or on their own. But now, as we start getting into this election season, it's going to be very, very interesting to see, what effect or what toll that takes on our markets. So, with that said, the first article that we want to talk about here today takes a hard look at the silver market
Hmm.
and what's taking place in the silver market, which has been year to date. In fact, it's up, I believe, roughly a little over 17% or so. But I love the title of this, where the hybrid metal is staging a catch up, meaning that gold has been very heavy in the news over the last, really, like we could say, several months, but it's been a few years
Yeah.
now. And silver's just kind of been holding its own and hanging in there, but now some of these forecasts are getting to be very aggressive. They're getting to be looking very promising for people who
Hmm.
are positioned in silver and looking for some growth. So, based on that, or on that intro there, Chris, tell us what you see happening with silver, and is all the buildup, is all the hype warranted? Is it something that we might expect to see a great thing out of silver prices here in the near future?
Yeah, I really think this isn't that surprising for those of us that have been following things the last few years, especially. We've talked a lot about the increased demand from AI, chip manufacturing, solar panels, electric cars, and the batteries that go in them, 5G networks. I mean, all of these things require silver, and so that's certainly a big push on the demand side of things, and mining has stayed relatively flat. So from a supply and demand standpoint, this really isn't that surprising. But what I will say is, uh, the prices don't always move in a nice straight line. We've kind of been expecting or waiting for this run here in silver for a while now, and it just continued to kind of build pressure and trade in the below $27 range, so 23 to 27 for the most part. And now all of a sudden has broken out here, and that's a lot of times how it happens. That's kind of what happened with gold earlier this year, right? Same sort of thing. We were trading in this pretty steady range, and all of a sudden it popped up a couple $100 an ounce. So
Right.
this is how it works in these markets. And sometimes when we're watching it, on our screens, we're frustrated that it's not moving dollar per dollar on the days that we want it to and whatnot. But again, if you just give it a little time and let the market shake things out, this is what happens. So they're certainly predicting over $32, which we're right around right now. But they're predicting holding that and growing quite a bit this year.
Yeah, and that's, as you kind of touched on there, the key with silver is that, I mean, there is a much greater or growing investment demand that's beginning to build out there. But then the industrial uses, couple that with the supply shortages that they're dealing with, it's kind of becomes an inevitable reality that, prices have nowhere to go but up. They have nothing other they can do is move, because that demand factor just keeps building and building and building. And then that leads us into the second article here, Chris, where, it's entitled "Silver is Ready to Break Out and What to Watch For." And what I find kind of interesting about that, we just mentioned a moment ago, silver's up 17% for the year, which that's a pretty impressive gain. That's some good growth for the year.
Yeah.
But see, according to Market Watch, what they're saying here is that it's now ready to break out. I mean, if we've already seen a 17% increase, and they're saying what to watch for, I mean, what should we expect, or what might we see with this quote breakout, as they call it?
Well, they're pretty confident that if silver can hold this month, or hold an entire month in the $31 or so range, that will give us a good foundation to jump to $45 to $55 an ounce in the next year. So, I mean, that would be, about another 50% or thereabouts a jump over the next year. So when you look at it that way, right, 17% doesn't sound that great, but
Right.
we're well on the way. And again, keep in mind, silver was stuck under $27 for about 4 years. That's a lot of time for pressure to build in the market. So when you see a big jump like this, it makes sense. We didn't see, instead of seeing silver move incrementally over that time period, which wouldn't really stand out to anybody. It just kind of held, build pressure, and now has popped up. It may sit, in this same, $26 to $31 range for a few months or so, but they're really expecting it to get into the 40s and 50s, and obviously keep going from there.
Well, and the interesting thing about it too is that, when you start looking at the silver market, gold market, really any market for that matter, obviously we all want to know, or we'd like to know as best we can, what the future does have in store. But when you start getting into, we do know that there's been a very big and growing contingency of investors who are looking more and more each day to diversify, get more into physical metals and things of this nature. That's the investment side of the silver market. When you get into the industrial side of what silver is doing, all of the uses of silver are things that are taking place in our economy right now that even by Wall Street's measure, they're saying these areas of where silver is being utilized in the products that they're making with it are expected to be some of the more explosive areas of the economy, which people can read more about in the link that we have provided here and some of the other links in some of our previous podcasts. So I have no doubt that, based on these factors, that we should see these explosive gains that they're talking about should very quickly become a reality. And it will give us something that I think will give us plenty to talk about here in the next several months as we, get near to the halfway point of 2024 right now, and going into the final part of 2024 as that momentum continues to build. So thank you for that, Chris. And, like I say, I think that this is something that will be a big topic, just like we had with gold when we started talking about gold roughly give or take a year ago on this podcast. When we talking about gold reaching prices like a couple $1,000 an ounce, where, as we talk today, it's over 2,400 an ounce, which that was the expectation. And that's what a lot of the analysts were saying, and they're right on. So for those of you tuning in, if you have not contacted our office to get some information about gold and silver, or perhaps receive our, it's all complimentary information, but our complimentary report entitled The Secret War on Cash, same as this podcast, you can do so at 1-800-289-2646, or please visit us online at www.skyrocketed, Swiss America, all one word, SWISS America.com. You'll see that in your podcast description there as well. And please contact us. If you're not subscribed to this podcast, we really would appreciate it, or hope you do so we can continue to keep in touch. Leave us some comments if there's anything additional that you'd like us to touch on or talk about. We'd love to do that as well. Thanks for tuning in. Chris, thanks for being here. And for all of you, until we talk next time, have a great rest of your week.
Take care.